"Are you my daddy?" a mysterious little girl asked the CEO. What happened next changed everything. In the bustling heart of Chicago, where skyscrapers touch the sky and people rush past without even making eye contact, something completely unexpected happened. It was just another ordinary day at the headquarters of Ravens Global Holdings, one of the city's most powerful companies. Men and women in suits walked briskly, phones to their ears, folders in hand, goals in mind, until the impossible, the unthinkable, the unbelievable simply happened. In the gleaming marble lobby, while everyone followed their perfectly rehearsed routine, a little girl with curious eyes, rosy cheeks, and a red bow in her hair stopped in the middle of the crowd. She wore a vibrant yellow dress and held a worn-out teddy bear, almost like a shield against the world around her. And right there, before dozens of indifferent eyes, she pointed her tiny finger at a man, a tall man, in a flawless dark suit, with a serious expression and firm steps. The very image of power. "Are you my daddy?" she asked, her voice sweet but strong enough to silence the room. Everyone froze. Time seemed to stop. The whispers ceased. Footsteps echoed into emptiness. And Ethan Ravens, the feared and respected CEO, the man who ran empires with a single phone call, stood paralyzed. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, everything around him ceased to exist. He couldn't move. He couldn't even blink. As if that simple question had pierced through his defenses, shattered his certainties, and exposed a truth he didn't even know was hidden. The little girl, unaware of the shock she had caused, stood there, waiting for an answer. That's when a woman appeared, running, breathless, visibly embarrassed. Her hair was tied up messily, her simple clothes revealed exhaustion, and her eyes, though tired, showed strength. She picked the girl up and murmured a rushed apology. "I'm sorry, sir. She's just a child." And before he could say anything, before any explanation could be offered, she disappeared into the crowd, vanishing as quickly as she had come. But Ethan couldn't return to his routine. What was that? A coincidence? A child's prank? Or an echo from the past he had buried long ago? He tried to carry on with his meetings, his million-dollar decisions, tried to ignore it, tried to reason with himself. But the girl's question echoed like silent thunder inside him. That little voice, that gaze, that moment wouldn't leave his mind. "Are you my daddy?" Who was that woman? Who was that child? And why did he feel that somehow it all made sense, even without any explanation? That simple question, asked by an unknown little girl on a random Tuesday, was the spark that would change the lives of 3 people forever. A question that scratched the cold surface of a man used to controlling everything. Everything but his own heart. And maybe, just maybe, that encounter wasn't as accidental as it seemed, because some truths, no matter how much we try to hide them, always find a way to return, even if it's through the innocent voice of a child. Ethan Ravens didn't sleep that night. He tried, yes. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw that gaze, the brown eyes of the little girl, so much like his own. Her voice echoed in his mind like a whisper he couldn't silence. "Are you my daddy?" He kept asking himself why that phrase affected him so deeply. Why his heart, always armored and cold, now felt vulnerable, exposed, pulsing with a restlessness he couldn't name. The next morning, still unable to accept that it had been a simple misunderstanding, he called his personal assistant. "I want to know who that woman with the child was yesterday. Now." The order was delivered with the same coldness that had made him a legend in business, but inside, Ethan was at war. There was something deeper behind that scene, a gut feeling, a vague memory, like a whisper from far away. The report came quickly. Emily Carter, 28 years old, waitress at a downtown restaurant, janitor on 2 different shifts, lives in a small rented apartment in a modest neighborhood in Chicago's South Side. Single. Mother of Isabel Carter, 3 years old. No legal records. no close family ties. Just one detail stood out. Emily had lived for a time in Seabrook, a coastal town where Ethan had stayed exactly 4 years earlier. The same period when, trying to escape a painful breakup and an identity crisis, he disappeared from the world and spent 3 weeks cut off from everything. The memory hit like a cold wind. Seabrook, a peaceful place, where the sound of waves was the only constant noise. He remembered going there in search of peace, anonymity, anything but the weight of the life he was living. And there was a small, cozy restaurant with the smell of fresh bread and freshly brewed coffee. A kind waitress used to smile at him there. Emily. The memory was still blurry, like a faded photograph. But something was beginning to take shape. One night, him and her, laughter, cheap wine, the feeling of being alive, even if only for a short time. And then, the emptiness. Ethan never knew exactly what happened that night. The alcohol, the exhaustion, the pain, it had all blended together like spilled ink in a glass of water. He returned to Chicago a few days later and never thought about it again, until now. Could it be? Could that little girl, Isabel, really be his daughter? The doubt now felt like an open wound. Ethan didn't know what to do. He couldn't just barge into Emily's life demanding answers. But he couldn't walk away either. For the first time in years, something had shaken his control. Something that couldn't be solved with a spreadsheet or a negotiation. He spent hours staring at Emily's file. Saw pictures. Read everything. Every detail screamed a truth he still wasn't ready to accept. Isabel had the same eye shape. The same little frown. And when he remembered her voice, he felt something he had never felt before. Belonging. But what if it was true? What if he had really left behind a daughter without knowing? What if that forgotten night had resulted in a life he had never been part of? Ethan, the man who always knew exactly what to do, now had no idea where to start. All he knew was that he needed to see them again. He needed to look at Emily, at Isabel, and understand, find out what he had lost, and maybe what he could still reclaim. Ethan knew that barging into Emily's life wasn't the right choice. There had been pain in her eyes during that brief encounter in the lobby. Pain and exhaustion. She wasn't an ordinary woman. She was a mother. And as much as the past might connect them, the way she protected Isabel, the way she carried her in her arms and rushed away, showed that her world was built on barriers. Barriers against abandonment, against empty promises, and maybe against him. So he decided to move cautiously, discreetly, in a way that didn't feel like intrusion, but rather an opportunity. The following week, he opened a part-time administrative position at Ravens Global Holdings. A simple role, but with good benefits, flexible hours, and most importantly, safety. He used a third-party name, a solo mother inclusion program, and made sure Emily's resume was selected. When she received the call, she hesitated. It sounded too good to be true, but necessity spoke louder. Emily couldn't say no. On her first day, she walked into the building with timid steps, eyes down, as if afraid of being recognized. But there were no encounters. Ethan watched everything through the cameras, from a distance, respecting her space, but feeling his heart race with every image he saw. Emily moved with restrained elegance, hair tied up practically, the posture of someone carrying the world on her back and still walking. She committed to her work with precision. She was efficient, organized, and quiet. She didn't draw attention. She didn't get close to anyone. She simply did what needed to be done and rushed home, where Isabel waited for her. Days passed, and Ethan still couldn't find the courage to speak to her. Something inside him feared breaking that fragile balance, but fate, once again, decided to intervene. That afternoon, the rain came without warning. The sky darkened in seconds, and soon the city was consumed by a sudden storm. Emily left her shift early, carrying her bag and her raincoat wrapped around her arm, trying to run to the subway. Isabel was waiting at daycare, and she was already late. But the rain came down with fury. Cars splashed puddles on the sidewalks. Wind scattered the papers she tried to hold. Ethan, just returning from a meeting, parked in front of the building at that very moment. And it was there, across the street, that he saw her. Soaked, rushed, almost invisible in the city's chaos. Without thinking, he grabbed the umbrella from the passenger seat and ran across. As he got closer, she saw him. The world seemed to stop for a second. He held out the umbrella, and beneath it, their eyes met. There was surprise in Emily's eyes, and a hint of memory, something undefined, but deep. She hesitated, but accepted the gesture. They walked side by side for a few steps in silence. The sound of the rain filled the space between them. Ethan said nothing. He simply walked her to the subway entrance, and before she disappeared down the stairs, he placed the umbrella in her hands and smiled briefly. Emily looked at the umbrella, then at him. Her eyes were full of questions, but no words were spoken. Just a quick nod. And she left. That night, placing the still damp umbrella in the kitchen corner, Emily felt a tremble in her chest. There was something familiar in that look, in that gesture, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to remember. The beach, that night, the crooked smile of a man who now had returned to cross her path. The rainy encounter stayed in Emily's mind. In the following days, she tried to ignore it, pretend nothing had happened. But the umbrella, still resting in the kitchen corner, seemed to watch her, as if it held not just raindrops, but memories she fought to forget. And more than that, questions she refused to answer. At the office, she kept her routine, arriving early, leaving on time, avoiding the main halls. But fate, once more, seemed to have other plans. It was an ordinary, muggy afternoon. Emily went down to the lower floor to make copies of some reports. She was focused, organizing the papers, when she heard the door open. She turned and froze. Ethan, tall, impeccable, standing at the door, holding a folder too. For a second, he also hesitated. Then he took a step forward. Emily dropped the papers, her breath caught. Time seemed to bend around them, and as if an old instinct took over, she stepped back twice and ran out of the room. Ethan tried to call her, but she was already gone. She rushed down the stairs, ignoring the elevator. Adrenaline pounding, the past chasing her, and all she wanted was to escape. But it was on the street, in the middle of the wet asphalt, that everything happened. A speeding taxi turned the corner, just as she was crossing without looking. A scream, tires screeching, and a strong arm pulling her at the last second. They both fell to the ground, soaked, breathless, hearts racing. Emily opened her eyes slowly, still dazed. She was lying on the cold pavement, her body trembling, and Ethan was kneeling beside her, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. She nodded, but her eyes filled with tears. The fall had been more inside than out. It was the past that crushed her. The pain of abandonment, the loneliness of raising a daughter alone, the silence of 4 years with no answer. She couldn't hold it in anymore. She cried, right there, in the middle of the street, under the light drizzle that had started to fall again. Ethan watched her, unsure of what to do. But then, with courage, he asked the question that had been burning in his throat for days. "Is Isabel my daughter?" Emily froze. The crying stopped, as if those words had made the world stop once more. Then, with teary eyes and a voice thick with emotion, she answered, "Yes. But now she's only mine." The words were sharp, like stones, but there was no hatred in her voice, only pain. The pain of waiting, of feeling forgotten, of giving birth with no one in the delivery room, of learning to care for, feed, and comfort a child who might never have a father. Ethan tried to speak, but she interrupted him. "You disappeared. I looked for your name, but you had already gone back to your perfect life. I stayed. I faced everything alone. You weren't there when she cried, when she had a fever, when she took her first steps." He closed his eyes, swallowing the lump in his throat. He wanted to explain, but any excuse would sound empty next to the reality she had lived. Emily slowly got up. She was soaked, her clothes stained from the pavement, but she walked with the dignity of someone who had survived abandonment. Before leaving, she turned one last time. "Don't come after us out of guilt. Isabel deserves someone who stays, and I can't survive being left again." Ethan remained there on the ground, his heart crushed and his soul in ruins. Because in that moment he understood he had lost something precious. And maybe, just maybe, there was still time to make it right. But he'd have to prove it, not with words, with presence. After that painful afternoon, Ethan disappeared from Emily and Isabel's life, at least to their eyes. He knew he couldn't just show up and demand a place in a story marked by pain and abandonment. Emily's pride was strong, and her trust, too fragile to be won with hollow promises. So he chose a different path. No words, no pressure, just silent presence. He started leaving small signs, children's books he learned Isabel loved, placed carefully at their doorstep. Her favorite snacks, delivered anonymously. A pair of new little shoes, simple, but chosen with love. Discreet gestures almost invisible but full of meaning. Actions that said, "I'm here, even if you don't want me to be." Emily noticed, of course. She saw the books, the little surprises, the new umbrella on rainy days, the food Isabel devoured with sparkling eyes. She felt a mix of anger and confusion. She wanted to confront Ethan, ask why he didn't show himself, why he didn't speak, why he moved like a shadow in their lives. But she also felt something different, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. One ordinary morning, Emily took Isabel to daycare near her work. The little girl ran off to join the other children, laughing and playing. Emily, distracted, checked her phone when something made her heart nearly stop. Ethan was there. No fanfare, no drama. Just him, kneeling on the floor, building a cardboard castle with the kids. Isabel approached with a glowing smile, placing a tiny flag made of a toothpick on top of the castle. Emily stood still, watching. The scene was almost surreal. The man she knew from the news, from power and distance, was there, like any father, laughing, playing, present. There were no demands, no expectations, just presence. For a moment, Emily felt a wave of emotions, anger, fear, distrust, but also a faint light of something she didn't want to admit. Maybe, just maybe, Ethan wanted to stay, not because he felt guilty, but because he truly wanted to. Because, despite the past, there was a genuine desire to be part of that family. She took a deep breath, trying to gather her thoughts. She never imagined seeing that man so close to her daughter, so present in her routine. It was strange, uncomfortable, but also unexpectedly comforting. As she watched, she saw Isabel run to him and, without hesitation, grab his hand. And then, as if sealing a silent pact, the little girl pulled Ethan's arm, laughing, asking him to keep playing. Emily realized she could no longer escape the truth. Ethan was there, not as an intruder, but as a possibility. The possibility of a different future, of a new beginning. In that moment, something inside her began to shift. Not overnight, not without pain, but slowly, with caution, with fear, but also with willingness. That simple gesture, that moment in the daycare yard, was the beginning of a new page. A page where silence began to break, where the past began to be faced, not with anger, but with the timid hope that maybe, just maybe, they could become a family. As the months passed, Ethan began to carefully weave himself into Isabel's routine, always respecting the boundaries Emily, silent and cautious, set. There was no rush, no pressure. He knew he had to earn her trust. this strong woman who had carried alone a weight he had never dared face. And so, quietly, his presence became part of the girl's days. On cold mornings, Ethan showed up to pick Isabel up from daycare. He arrived discreetly with a shy smile, no grand speeches, just the silent promise that he was there. Isabel ran to him with open arms, as if she knew he was a part of her, even if he never spoke the word father. Ethan never called himself that. He knew the weight that word carried, a weight only time and respect could fill. In the afternoons, they played at the park near Emily's apartment. Ethan taught Isabel how to draw, patiently, while she laughed, distracted by the warmth of the colors and the rustling leaves. He was a man used to commanding billion-dollar deals. But there, between colored pencils and childish giggles, he was just Ethan, a man trying to rebuild something he had once left behind. In the afternoons, they played at the park near Emily's apartment. Ethan taught Isabel how to draw, patiently, while she laughed, distracted by the warmth of the colors and the rustling leaves. He was a man used to commanding billion-dollar deals. But there, between colored pencils and childish giggles, he was just Ethan, a man trying to rebuild something he had once left behind. It wasn't an easy path. The fear of opening up again, of letting herself believe in something that once hurt so much, was always there. Emily often wondered if she could trust again, if she could let Ethan be a part of their lives without repeating the past. She had built a wall around her heart, and every small step he took had to be received with caution. Ethan, for his part, didn't try to rush anything. He knew his role was to be present, consistently and truthfully, without pushing, without forcing, without hurrying emotions. He wanted Emily and Isabel to know him as he was now, a man willing to love and care, not just a name or a title in a company. One day, Isabel made a different drawing. She had drawn all three of them, herself, Ethan, and Emily, holding hands, smiling under a bright sun. The drawing stayed in Emily's purse for days. She didn't know if she should show it to Ethan, but she couldn't stop looking at it. It was a silent request, a hope expressed with colors and innocent strokes. And in that moment, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a real desire to believe in a new beginning, to open a small window in her heart and let a bit of light and warmth in. But even so, the word father remained unspoken. Ethan didn't say it. Emily didn't know if she wanted to hear it. For them, what mattered was what was happening there, in that simple life of school runs, drawings, and laughter. What mattered was the daily decision to stay. And so, between fear and hope, silence and gestures, the days began to transform. A slow, steady bond was forming, a delicate, meaningful connection. Ethan was no longer just a stranger from their past. He was becoming someone who, without noise, was starting to feel indispensable. Because in the end, family isn't just blood. It's presence, it's choice, it's love in action, minute by minute, step by step. And slowly, the lives of Isabel, Emily, and Ethan began to write a new chapter, one that, despite the scars, promised to be full of hope and new beginnings. The sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky with warm shades of orange and gold as Ethan and Emily sat side by side on a park bench. A soft breeze rustled the leaves, creating a peaceful symphony that invited silence and reflection. Isabel, full of laughter, played nearby, running and jumping, sensing the magic of the moment without even knowing why. Finally, after months of silent gestures and cautious closeness, they were there, face to face, no barriers, no masks. The weight of unspoken pain began to show in words that had long been buried by fear and pride. Emily looked at Ethan, her eyes carrying a complex mix of pain and hope. "I carry so much resentment," she began, her voice low, almost a whisper. 4 years of silence, sleepless nights, unanswered questions. I tried to protect Isabel from what I didn't understand, from what made me feel abandoned. Her hand held his tightly, as if he were the anchor that kept her steady. Ethan squeezed her hand with tenderness, feeling the weight of her words, knowing that each one held a story of struggle and survival. "I regret it. Every day," he said, his voice raw with sincerity. "I never meant to run. I just didn't know how to stay. I was lost. And you both paid the price. But I'm not running anymore, Emily. I want to be here. For you. For Isabel. Not because I'm her father by obligation, but because I want to be." Her gaze softened, and a single tear escaped. She wiped it away quickly, but didn't try to hide it. It was a moment of genuine vulnerability, the recognition of what could be a new beginning. "I want to believe that," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I can't forget the past overnight. I need to know I can trust you." Ethan nodded, understanding every word. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to let me show you I can be different, that I can stay, even when things get hard." They fell silent, letting the world around them fill the space. Isabel, now tired, came over and hugged Ethan. That simple moment, so ordinary, yet so full of meaning, seemed to seal a silent promise between them. The sunset deepened, and Ethan looked at Emily, a new light in his eyes, one she had never seen before. "I want to build a family with you, not out of duty, not out of guilt, but out of love, because now I know that's what truly matters." Emily took a deep breath, her heart torn between fear and hope. The past still lingered, but there was room now for the future, for a fresh start, for the possibility of being more than strangers tied by a mistake and an absence. They stood up, and together, with Isabel running ahead, they walked through the park under the fading light of day, one step at a time, one word at a time. They were rebuilding something once thought impossible. A family, not born of blood, but of choice, of presence, of love in motion. That golden afternoon, as the sky transformed into a blanket of stars, Ethan and Emily found what they had been searching for all along. Not perfection, but truth. Not the absence of pain, but the courage to love, even with scars. Because in the end, what truly matters is not who we were, but who we are willing to become from this moment on. A year had passed since that sunset in the park, when Ethan and Emily finally began to untangle the knots of a heavy and uncertain past. Life, with its ups and downs, had tested them, pushed them, but had also gifted them silent victories that allowed their bond to grow and strengthen. And on that special day, in a simple chapel hidden behind a quiet forest, everything seemed to align to celebrate what they had built together. The chapel was small, almost modest, with white wooden walls and windows that let in the soft morning light. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air, a delicate mix of jasmine and lavender. Only a few people were there, close friends, a few family members Emily had managed to bring together, and some of Ethan's co-workers who knew the story but respected the intimacy of the moment. No luxury, no extravagance, just simplicity and truth. Isabel walked in holding a small basket of flowers, her eyes sparkling with joy. She wore a simple white dress, her golden curls pinned with little clips. Her smile lit the way, and each step she took seemed to mark a promise of a future filled with love. She was the flower girl of the ceremony, and her role was more than symbolic. It was the purest expression of the family they were becoming. Emily, in a light, flowing white dress, walked slowly down the aisle, holding the arm of the man who was now her husband. Ethan looked sharp, but unpretentious. His gaze met hers with an intensity that revealed the entire journey that had led them there. From the unexpected encounter in that office lobby, to the silent nights spent rebuilding trust. Their steady steps sent a clear message. He had finally chosen to stay. The vows were simple, yet deeply meaningful. No scripted lines, only words from the heart, spoken with the sincerity that only those who've been through pain can offer. Emily spoke first. Her voice, both soft and strong, confessed her fears, her wounds, but also her desire to believe in love and in true partnership. I promise to be here, not only on the easy days, but in the storms too. I promise to choose our family every single day, even when it's hard, because love isn't just a feeling, it's a decision. Then Ethan took her hands, his chest overflowing with emotion. I promise I will never run again, that I'll be a constant presence, unwavering support, and true love. I won't let fear drive me away from what matters most. Today, in front of you, I choose to be the man my daughter and my wife deserve. Isabel, sitting in the front row, watched intently, as if she understood every word filling the air. Her smile grew wider with each moment, and when the priest finally declared them husband and wife, she ran into their arms, hugging them with the purity of a child who knows she's finally found her home. After the ceremony, at the small outdoor reception surrounded by trees and wildflowers, joy filled the air. Laughter echoed, stories were shared, and the lightness of a hopeful future warmed everyone's heart. There was no need for grandeur to celebrate the greatness of that moment. What mattered was the love that united them all. For Ethan, that day symbolized far more than a formal union. It was the closing of a cycle marked by mistakes, absences, and regrets. It was the beginning of a new chapter where he could finally be the man he always wanted to be. Not just for Emily and Isabel, but for himself. The promise that he would never run away again. For Emily, that wedding was proof that the courage to forgive and open one's heart could turn wounds into strength. She had chosen to love again, to trust a partner who respected her struggles and was willing to walk beside her, even in uncertainty. And for Isabel, that newly formed family was the solid foundation every child deserves, built on presence, care, and the daily choice to stay. The past didn't matter. What mattered was the now, and what they would build together from here on. Night fell, and with it, the silent promise of better days. In a world that so often demands perfection, they had learned that true beauty lies in the simplicity of what is done with love, in the sincerity of vows, in the warmth of a hug, in a shared smile. Because family isn't something given by blood alone. Family is a choice, a decision, a constant act of loving, caring, and staying, even when things get hard. And in that peaceful forest, under a starlit sky, a new family was born, not by accident, not by fate, but by choice. A choice of love, of surrender, and of hope. The next morning, soft sunlight peeked shyly through the windows of the modest home where Ethan, Emily, and Isabel were now beginning their new life together. The warm smell of fresh pancakes filled the kitchen, mixing with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Ethan stood at the stove, focused, gently stirring the batter, trying to get every detail just right for the perfect family breakfast. Emily entered slowly, her hair still slightly tousled, a peaceful smile on her lips. She walked over and wrapped her arms around Ethan from behind, feeling the solid, comforting presence she had longed for. Their bodies fit together naturally, as if that had always been their place, despite the past they carried. Isabel came running in, her light footsteps echoing through the house, her sweet, curious smile lighting up her little face. She jumped into her father's arms, laughing aloud with the contagious energy of a child who finally feels safe and loved. The sound of that laughter, that simple joy, was the perfect melody to begin the day, to begin their new life. In the kitchen, between giggles and little mishaps, they began chatting about the day ahead. Nothing grand, just the everyday life that now carried a different flavor, a sense of belonging, of bonds built not only from shared experience, but from the daily decision to be there. Emily, watching Ethan with eyes filled with gratitude and hope, felt the weight of the battles they had faced. Sleepless nights, moments of doubt and fear. But there, in that simple instant, she knew that every step, no matter how painful, had been worth it. Because the life they had before them was real, true, and built on the small decisions that created something far greater. Ethan, as he served pancakes onto plates, felt a peace he had never thought he could find. He was no longer the lonely man wrapped in business and emotional distance. Now, he was part of a family, a man choosing to be present, facing his past with courage, and dedicating himself to be better each day for the two people who meant everything to him. Isabel, with her innocent gaze, pulled her chair close to the table, ready to share a moment that to her was magical, but that meant even more to the adults. Her presence was the bridge that united Ethan and Emily, the reason so many wounds were being healed. They laughed together, shared stories, made simple plans for the future, a walk in the park, a visit to daycare, maybe dinner cooked at home. Nothing fancy, nothing meant to impress, just the routine of a family learning, day by day, how to love and care for one another. The modest house, with its worn walls and simple furniture, took on new meaning. It wasn't just a place to live. It was a home, a space where simplicity turned into warmth, where every corner held a story of resilience and choice, a place where love was nurtured, even in the smallest details. That day, as the sun rose high in the Chicago sky, Ethan looked at Emily and Isabel with a deep feeling of gratitude. The journey had been long, full of obstacles and uncertainties, but in that moment, they were together, and that was all that truly mattered. They had learned that family isn't defined only by blood, but by constant presence, by the commitment to stay, by the love shown in everyday actions. Through challenges, through tears, and through reunions, they had found a path to real happiness, the kind that doesn't need grand scenes, only hearts willing to love. As the afternoon wore on, the house filled with laughter, conversations, and a cozy sense of belonging. The simplicity of that moment was the miracle they had longed for, the proof that, even after years of absence and pain, it was possible to rebuild, restart, and bloom again. And so, between pancakes and hugs, hopeful glances, and sincere smiles, Ethan, Emily, and Isabel took the first step into a new life. A life where the past was no longer a burden, but a story that had made them stronger. Where the love they chose, the love they nurtured each day, was the solid foundation of their home. Because in the end, what makes a house a home isn't the walls, it's the people who choose to stay, who choose to love, who choose to build, together, even when the path is hard. And there, on that quiet morning in Chicago, they truly became a family. Not by chance, not by fate, but by choice, by the will to stay, to care, and to love forever. So, did you enjoy this story full of emotions and twists? If you did, go ahead and leave your like. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new stories that will touch your heart. Now tell us, what city are you watching from? I'd love to know where these special vibes are coming from. Let's build a community full of love and positive energy together. See you in the next story.